I'm joined now by the Times property editor Carol Lewis to go through the news of the day. I've just been talking about how Andy Burnham is pledging to rebuild the country's hard power. He's written in the Times this morning. He's pushing for defence spending to be focused on Britain rather than being dispersed to America or Europe. Launching himself into the world of foreign policy, the man who is currently Prime Minister in waiting says he wants to be open with the public about how he would meet this commitment to spend 3.5% of GDP on defence by 2035. It's his first major intervention on foreign policy because he's been relatively quiet about it so far. So, Carol, I guess there's been a lot of pressure for him to say something about foreign policy because he's seen very much as a domestic Prime Minister.
He is. I mean, he's more than domestic. He's seen very much as a Manchester-based Prime Minister in waiting. I thought the piece was very, very good. I think the bit about transparency, though, falls down and he doesn't actually say how he's going to pay for it. And we know there's a $5 billion shortfall in the defence budget. And he doesn't mention anything about how he's going to pay for that. I mean, $5 billion is, it's like 5 days of welfare spending. He's got to tackle the big white elephant, which is welfare spending.
Yeah, I agree. It's good to hear you say that, Carol.
How is he going to fund all this? We have got some exciting developments in defence, and surprisingly, as property editor, I'm quite up on this. I mean, there are things that, as you talked about things going wrong, but there are things that are going right.
What?
Like I know, shock. There's the Dragonfire project, which is the big project we have, which is, I always say the names of these companies wrong, Quintex, MBDA and Leonardo are working on. It's a defence system where you shoot down with lasers at drones.
That's right.
So instead of having £1 million missile rockets, about £10 ago, you can knock these drones out the sky. I mean, that's going ahead of schedule and should be coming online next year. So we have some great projects. We have a BAE Systems project, which is up in Preston, which is all to do with a stealth bomber. I think it's called the Tempest. Help me out here.
How would I know? You're the defence expert.
I think we have got some very exciting projects, and he's right, they are all around the country rather than being particularly based in London and the South East. And in fact, he probably knows quite a bit about them because there are quite a few in the North West.
It's true. I mean, that's the point I think that is interesting about defence spending is, first of all, it's quite regional. So you've got the nuclear base up in Faslane. You've got a lot of defence establishments in the southwest and in the northwest and northeast. And funny enough, as the property editor, I mean, the thing we always forget about defence is, we overlook the basics. That's what sort of drives me mad. We're busy procuring £1 billion frigates, but the British soldiers are living in and their families are living in substandard accommodation.
Yes, the military housing desperately needs updating, and they were promised that they would have the housing updated. That now seems to be on hold. And
they keep doing these sort of slightly weird deals with property companies, which end up costing them so much more.
Yes, I mean, that is definitely, when you talk about transparency, again, you've got to say, where is the money coming from? Because if it's coming from, we're going to leave the soldiers living in damp, squalid accommodation, that's not going to help at all.
Yeah, exactly. And it presumably comes across your desk as well, because a lot of MOD land is often made available for housing, and there's always huge rows. Because obviously, I used to represent a constituency in Oxfordshire. There are quite a few disused bases, particularly actually US bases. And people, I think, quite right say, well, this is a perfect place to put 3,000 houses, and then everybody gets up in arms about it.
They are good places to put houses.
Yeah.
And I know, I come from Cambridgeshire, and in east of England there's a lot of air bases that are disused, and they are building housing developments. Alconbury is one that I've been to see quite recently, but there's a lot around Cambridgeshire because they're nice and flat. There's usually not too much to decontaminate. They're flat, they're ready for housing, they're perfect.
Brilliant. Well, let's move on to global affairs. Obviously, you will have read overnight that Donald Trump has issued more strikes against Iran. Andy Burnham said in his Times piece that the global picture is darkening. That's one way of putting it. Donald Trump has said that Tehran wants to make a deal. He was speaking to reporters on Air Force One.
They called a little while ago. They want to make a deal so bad. I just don't know if they're worthy of making a deal. I don't know that they're going to honor the deal. That's the problem.
The Iranians responded with attacks against sites in Bahrain, Kuwait and Qatar, so perhaps that's one form of an answer. Let's speak now to Christiane Amanpour, the very well-known chief international anchor at CNN. It's great to have you on the programme, Christiane. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Ed.
I mean, we've been here so many times before in a war that's been going on now for 4 or 5 months. President Trump says Tehran wants to make a deal, but those words are utterly meaningless, aren't they?
Look, the president declared, as far as he was concerned, the ceasefire, or the MOU specifically, was over. He used that word over. But then he quickly said that he didn't want to go back to full-scale war. The way I'm looking at it right now, I'm saying both of them, the United States and Iran, are battling over the control of the Straits of Hormuz. It appears that this round was triggered by Iran firing at ships in that region because they say that the U.S. Navy was trying to redirect vessels from the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran is normally, which is a normal route, down to a more different route, a more southerly route. And that was apparently what set off Iran. And likewise, the United States doesn't want to see the whole system there change from free access before the war to now controlled by Iran. So I think that is what's happening. And the strikes and counterstrikes are basically public negotiations over what is going to happen to the Straits.
It seems to me that Iran holds all the cards at the moment, because surely President Trump is under enormous pressure to get some sort of solution, because he's heading into the midterms. It's an unpopular war and it's having a big impact on the US economy.
All of that is absolutely true, which is why Trump was so eager to go into a peace deal and end this war. And actually, as everybody said at the beginning, when the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, was made public, that this was heavily tilted towards Iran from the first paragraph down to the last. Though there is a problem that Iran could be over-negotiating. It has got this sort of attitude whereby it extends negotiations for months and months and months, and it could find itself on the wrong side of this. We just don't know. President Trump yesterday tried to say that he had so weakened Iran and so, perfected the situation there that oil prices were dropping. Well, that's, as you know, not true, because oil prices have risen since this latest round, as they would. Iran, on the other hand, also needs an end to this because of its dire economy. So both sides need and want an end to it. Both sides are trying to shape how that actually happens. And then the added complicated factor for this is Israel's role in Lebanon. That, of course, was also part of the MOU. The first paragraph was to end all war, including Israel's against Hezbollah. And that was meant to go into some kind of negotiation and end that situation there, which hasn't actually happened yet.
Yeah, that's actually a very good way of taking this debate wider. President Trump sucks up so much airtime, but I'd love, given the incredible contacts you have, what is your sense of the other Gulf states? Where are they on this? Because they presumably want the war to end, but they're against Iran. They would like to see Iran defeated. They didn't send anyone to the Khamenei's funeral. What is your sense of what they're thinking about the next steps?
Well, I think if you're talking about the GCC countries, they're divided. You're right. The UAE and Saudi Arabia would have liked to have seen Iran defeated. I think when they saw that that wasn't going to happen, Saudi Arabia, certainly it's been reported, wanted Trump to get a proper ceasefire and end this war. Qatar has been more neutral, if you like. It has been helping, certainly, with the ceasefire negotiations and helping as an intermediary even until now. Same with Oman. So there is a split there. They want the war to end because it's not good for anybody or anything there. On the Israeli front, Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want the war to end because he's committed his government and his policy towards what they call a forever war and does not want to, quote unquote, let Iran off the hook until it is, quote unquote, destroyed and crippled. That apparently doesn't look like it's going to happen. It would take a lot more military commitment to make that happen, if at all possible, which it's deemed to be impossible to actually destroy this country. But you also raise the issue of Khamenei's funeral, the Ayatollah who was killed on the opening salvo of this war. And it's taken 4 months for them to allow this funeral procession to happen. And for the Iranians inside, that has been a bit of a referendum. And even international reporters are saying that they've never seen crowds this size for 6 days. And today, the body is going to be buried in Mashhad, a religious city, which was Khamenei's birthplace. Let me just say that I'm raising that partly because of the referendum that it is on at least a portion of support for the Iranian regime. But also, if you look at the bombings overnight, the United States says that it bombed and parts of a railway that led from Tehran to Mashhad. To me, that's a signal. That's not an accident. In addition, Iran says it's lost, nearly 24 people. And those attacks on civilian infrastructure, i.e. electric grids, power plants, desalination plants, are not legal under international law. They would constitute an international war crime, according to most lawyers and analysts. So, is this heading into full-scale war again, or is it a major bump in a road towards what both sides want, which is an end to this?
Yes, and that I picked up that point about the railway when I was reading the reports this morning in the newspaper. I mean, that is a sort of, this is an odd way of putting it, but that's a kind of personal attack on the Iranian regime. The rest can be put down as taking out infrastructure in order to degrade Iran's military capability. But that was a signal, as you say, to say, this is the most important day in Iran's recent history, the burial of their supreme leader. We can disrupt it.
Yes, I mean, I think if that's the case, that is a signal. But I would just say that no attack on civilian infrastructure is legitimately a military target. Not water, not electricity, not things that are fully designed for civilian use. Maximum care has to be taken, even if you think it might have some dual-use purpose, by the way. But so that's that point.
And just one final point, Christiane, taking it even wider. I mean, we just had the NATO summit in Ankara. President Erdogan gave everybody loaded revolvers to take home with them. Turkey plays a big part in all this now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to know the reason behind that. I haven't read any reason for him to give loaded or even unloaded revolvers to everybody, including apparently Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission. But look, Turkey plays a massive role. Turkey is, and certainly Erdogan himself, is a big friend of President Trump. They admire each other. And remember, Trump said he wasn't going to go to this NATO summit, but he did because he said, of his respect and admiration for President Erdogan. On the other hand, Israel really tried to, Netanyahu did an interview with CNN, actually, where he tried to say that Turkey was an enemy because he believes that Turkey is, aligned against Israel. So there's so many competing geopolitical threads and webs, but the real big problem and the big point is, how does this war in the Middle East end, and does it end with an Iran that is accepted as a responsible player in the region, or are they going to continue being at no war, no peace, and just this cold, hot war brewing for the next several months? It looks like the American administration doesn't have a huge idea how to get out of it. Their negotiators are not really presenting these, important plans. And I will say one more thing, which is important for everybody to note. There is a view that, as divided as internal Iranian leadership may be, hardliners not wanting to negotiate, that the same exists in the United States. And a former ambassador to NATO pointed out to me that the Pentagon under Pete Hegseth is much more committed to the war than other members of the administration.
How interesting. Well, I suspect it will carry on as a hot and cold war for many months to come. Christiane Amanpour, the very distinguished chief international anchor at CNN, thank you for joining us on the programme. Well, welcome back. It's Ed Vaizey, still with the Times' property editor Carol Lewis. Now, we're used to going on about the cost of living, and if that wasn't bad enough, it turns out the cost of dying is also prohibitive. So, which way to turn? It's a really important topic, and there is actually a great piece in the Times today analysing why it's becoming increasingly expensive to die. Funerals cost an average of more than £4,500. Probate fees are going up. Inheritance tax bills are on the rise. What is one to do? It all seems very unfair, Carol.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, I think the cheapest option is just to have a basic cremation with no service, no friends, no anything, and that'll cost you £1,500. So
Really?
there you go. Cheap option.
So if you want a cheap funeral, gradually get rid of all your friends.
Get rid of all your friends and all your money. I mean, this story is pegged on the probate costs going up on Monday. They go up to £526 from £300. That's the kind of administrative fee you have to pay to the government. But we've also seen inheritance tax receipts have doubled in the last 10 years.
Really?
And that's because the tax-free allowance has been stuck at $325,000 per person since 2009. We have an extra 175,000 if you give property to a direct descendant. That's been frozen for about 6 years, I think. And you've got the value of housing and other assets going up, but you've got the thresholds frozen. We know this from income tax, and so more people get dragged into it. So the receipts have gone from 4 billion to 8 billion. And then we've got the prospect coming up from April 2027 of pensions being put into the inheritance tax pot.
So you should have to spend your pension before you die as well.
I think if you can, Ed, give it all away.
I agree.
Just spend it. Go on
I
massive cruise around the world. Just have parties. Go for it. Give it away.
Nothing. I can't remember who it was. Somebody once said to me, if I leave my children anything, it means I've died too soon.
You haven't enjoyed yourself enough. Yes. I mean, anything give away, as long as you don't die for 7 years, it will be exempt from the tax.
And have you planned your funeral, Carol?
No, I haven't. No.
I mean, because I think the funeral I just want the cardboard box and the crematorium. I mean,
cardboard box and a crematorium, maybe not the best idea.
Why not?
Well, it'll burn, won't it?
Well, that's the point of a crematorium.
Yes,
I
true.
mean, why do you have this huge wooden casket? If it's all going to go up in flames?
A wicker basket. They're increasingly
just get a couple of cardboard
popular,
boxes from your local Asda or whatever, Argos, and then have a party afterwards. That's what I would spend the money on.
But you spend your money on the party, which is what's taking up to $4,500.
Get rid of the body and then have a nice party.
And where do you want your ashes to be put?
That's a good question. Ashes are a big issue, aren't they?
We had
the cat's ashes in the house for many, many years, but they were accidentally thrown out, and we got a free gravestone for the cat because the cat died shortly after my father, and the man who made his gravestone threw in a free one for the cat.
Oh, that's sweet.
So that follows my mother around.
The ashes and the tombstone aren't together.
They're not together. The ashes were chucked down the loo, if you want me to be honest about it.
Oh dear.
Let's think about the fact that we're going to win the World Cup, which is obviously very important. We've got a clear route through Norway, Argentina, and then we beat France in the final. And then we'll get a bank holiday. Is that a good thing?
We're jinxing it, talking about it.
Is that a good thing that we're going to get a bank holiday?
You say it so definitely. I love your confidence.
I'm supremely confident. We're obviously going to lose to Norway. I'm only kidding.
I think if we get through, then we'll deserve a bank holiday. Yes, even though there's people griping that it will lose the economy $2 billion. I think
that's what it costs.
Apparently, it's what a bank holiday costs in lost revenue. But of course, it will make the pubs very happy, and all of us could have a great party, which I think we deserve if we get that far.
But then you sort of make it back, don't you? You make it back because you have this huge parade. And everyone goes to the pub and spends like money's going out of fashion.
Exactly. It'll be a boon for the pubs.
Yeah.
And we'll have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is happening in the world of property, Carol?
In the world of property,
house prices are sort of stable at the moment.
That's a very nice way of saying it. Most people say stagnant, but stable.
Well, sometimes one day you'll read an article saying house prices have fallen, then you'll suddenly read an article saying, oh, house prices went up a bit. So it just strikes me they're sort of bumbling along.
Yes, they're bobbing along. I mean, we're talking about ups and downs of tiny percentages. We've still got the case that the market in the more expensive areas is really flat, really dead. Super quiet. Everyone's waiting for those interest rates to come down.
And people, it's quite interesting, this kind of talk about a land value tax. I mean, there's lots of people who think the council tax is very unfair, that very, very expensive homes pay quite a low level of council tax. But I can imagine that this prospect of the mansion tax set at 2 million, now they're talking about 1.5 million, is potentially also kind of stagnating the housing market at the top end, because people are nervous about buying a property and suddenly being... Because you could see people paying, £10,000 a year potentially if the kind of talk they're saying is true.
It's interesting that we keep going back to this idea of a proportional property tax.
Yeah.
Keeps coming up. I know that Torsten Bell and Rachel Reeves looked at this as well. In theory, it's a very good idea. You get rid of council tax, you get rid of stamp duty, you have this one proportional annual tax based on value. There are lots of things it's just not a quick fix. I think it's a good idea, but it just needs some thought. You need to value all the properties for a start. That will take time, and they will be open to appeals. You have to also think, do you give a discount to people who've just moved? Do you give them a discount for the next 5 years because they've just paid stamp duty? When we transition over, how do you reevaluate if someone builds an extension? Is it based on planning permission?
That's such a good point, because first of all, trying to change a tax system is fraught with difficulties. And the minute you said that about the extension, it takes you back to the 18th century and the window tax.
Exactly.
And suddenly you get people kind of building these kind of extraordinary structures to try and sort of game the tax system. It's a sort of crazy idea.
It's a crazy idea, and it would take time, and we don't give politicians time. We just don't.
We don't.
We're very impatient.
We are. But we've been very patiently going through the news with you. The Times property editor Carol Lewis, thank you so much for coming on the show this morning.